My name is Amy Ballantyne. Welcome to Power to the People Pleasers. I am so excited to have my guest, Terry Tucker, here today. Hi, Terry. How are you?
I'm great, Amy. Thanks for having me on. I'm really looking forward to talking with you.
Yes, I'm so excited to talk to you as well. You have this really cool bio. I feel like if my son could be here to interview you, he would be super pumped. So, SWAT Team Hostage Negotiator. Wow. Okay. Wild. Cancer survivor on this beautiful journey, a motivational speaker, author, many time possible podcast guest. You've played in the NCAA Division I college basketball. My goodness, marketing executive, Terry. A lot going on.
I know. When you say that, I kind of feel like I better figure out what I'm going to do when I grow up, kind of thing. So
I love it. I love it. I love it. So, one of the things when I first got a chance to meet you, you said that you feel so energized by helping others. And I'd love for you to share a little bit of your story of how you've got to this place of doing all these cool things and having these experiences in life. And then we'll go from there. And I have more questions.
sure. So I really think, in all honesty, it goes back to my parents. I
Mm.
am the oldest of three boys. You can't tell this from looking at me or from my voice, but I'm 6'8" tall, and I actually played college basketball on a scholarship at the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina. I've actually got a brother who's 6'7", who was a pitcher for the University of Notre Dame. Another brother who's 6'6", who was drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers in the National Basketball Association. And then my dad was 6'5". So I sort of joked that if you sat behind our family in church growing up, not a prayer's chance you're going to see anything that was going on, in front. But our 5'8" mother was the boss. And I
Oh.
really think that, my parents taught us the value of, caring for each other, supporting each other,
Mhm.
loving each other. That's what a family was all about. And my parents did divide and conquer parenting. I'd have a game on a certain night at this time, and my dad would go to that. My brother would have a practice at the
Mhm.
same time, at another location, and mom would go to that. So we were always running in a million different directions growing up. But I really think, my whole life started with my parents. I know that's obvious, but at the same time, they taught us what it was like and what a family should be like. And I think I just took that, whether it was through college, going to a military school. When I graduated from college, I moved home to find a job. I'm really going to date myself now, but this was long before the internet was available to help people find employment. As you
Yes.
mentioned, I started out my first job at Wendy's in the corporate
Mhm.
headquarters in their marketing department.
Cool.
That was the good news. The bad news was I lived with my parents for the next 3.5 years as I helped
Mhm.
my mom care for my grandmother and my father, who were both dying of different forms of cancer. So cancer has really kind of been very pervasive in my life. But for the last 11 years, I've been dealing with cancer, a
Mhm.
rare form of melanoma. And while it's certainly been a very dark and ugly journey, I've had amputations and things like that. I think there's really two big things I've learned. Number one, I don't think you really know yourself until you've been tested by some form of adversity in your life. And
Mm.
secondly, I think cancer has made me a better human being.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. My goodness. So, Terry, that this podcast is for individuals who, put themselves last, focus on pleasing others instead of themselves. And there's often this negative connotation to that. And I was really excited to have a conversation with you on the other side of it as well, right? That we can be fueled. I would say for a lot of my life, I had a real deep belief that part of the reason why I was saying yes to things, kind of related to that Yes Man movie, was because I wanted to experience life. I wanted to help others meet new people. I wanted to be a part of so many different opportunities, and that's why I was saying yes. And it wasn't until I actually connected the dots on those moments of there's a difference between saying yes to helping and being involved to when you say yes and then you feel resentful and frustrated, right? So I love your energy around helping others can really energize yourself. So share what are you doing now that really fuels you?
This, in all honesty, I mean, it's true. I think back. I mentioned my dad was dying of cancer when I graduated from college, and at the time he had end-stage breast cancer, which back in the 1980s they really didn't know how to treat men with breast cancer, and they pretty much told him to go home and die. And he lived for another 3.5 years, and I believe he did because he had a purpose. It wasn't I'm just going to lay in bed and feel sorry for myself and contemplate my fate here. He was in real estate and he worked actually up till 2 weeks before he died. And I sort of filed that in the back of my mind. It's like, well, when it's my turn, and apparently it is my turn now, I need to remember that. I need to have a purpose. And I'm still being treated for my cancer. I have tumors in my lungs that every 3 weeks I go to the hospital and I'm treated for a week. And then I get 2 weeks off. And during that 2 week period, I do this. I am a guest on podcasts with nice people like you and sort of tell my story. And what I think is important about that is it gives me that purpose. It gives me that energy. And my wife and I kind of go back and forth on, she's like, you need to rest. You need to, build up your blood counts. You need to do. And I always tell her, look, I get plenty of rest when I'm dead. This energizes me. This gives me a purpose. This gives me something to do. And I'm not focused on me. I'm focused on trying to help other people.
Gosh, that's powerful, Terry. Huge. Wow. So you wrote a book, Sustainable Excellence, 10 Principles to Leading Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life. Share more about that.
Yeah, the book was really born out of two conversations I had. I used to be a high school basketball coach when we lived in Texas. And I had a player who moved, she and her fiance moved to Colorado where my wife and I live. And the four of us had dinner one night. And I remember saying to her after dinner that I was excited that she was living close and I could watch her find and live her purpose. And she got real quiet for a while. And then she looked at me and she said, well, Coach, what do you think my purpose is? I said, I have absolutely no idea what your purpose is, but that's what your life should be about. Finding the reason you were put on the face of this earth, using your unique gifts and talents and living that reason. So that was one conversation. And then I had a young man in college who reached out to me on social media and he said, what do you think are the things I need to know, not to just be successful in my job or in business, but to be successful in life overall? And I didn't want to give him that, get up early, work hard, help others. I didn't want to give him that. Not that those aren't important. Those are incredibly important. But I wanted to see if I could go deeper with him. So, I kind of took some time and had these sort of 10 thoughts, these 10 ideas, these 10 principles, and I sent them to him. And then I kind of stepped back and I was like, well, I got a life story that fits underneath this principle, or I know somebody whose life emulates that principle. So literally during the 3 to 4 month period where I was healing after I had my leg amputated, I sat down at the computer every day and I built stories, and they're real stories about real people underneath each of the principles. And that's how sustainable excellence came to be.
Amazing. Amazing. So I don't want you to share all of the juicy nuggets because I want people to get the book. But if there's one that relates to people pleasing, or, I'm kind of like your mom in the, driving all the people, and my husband, I don't know if he would say if I'm the boss in the family, but the kids might.
You are, though. So, whether he'll admit it or not, you are. So you're good with that.
So what would be your one tip from your book that you would share to people like me?
It's funny because when people reach out to me after reading the book, there's always one principle that, resonates with them. And the principles are not in any order. Number 1 is not any more important than number 7 or anything like that. But the one that really resonates with me, and I guess it resonates with me because I'm sort of embarrassed or ashamed that I've done this throughout my life, is this. It's most people think with their fears and their insecurities instead of using their minds. And I know I've done that. I know, somebody asks you to do something. Well, should I do that? Well, is it good for me? Am I going to learn something? Is this going to be something positive in my life? Oh, wait a minute. Maybe somebody, what will they say if I fail? Or do I have enough knowledge or information to do that? that's thinking with your fears and insecurities. That's not thinking with your mind. And I always tell, especially young people, when I talk to them, if there's something in your heart, something in your soul that you believe you're supposed to do, but it scares you, go ahead and do it. Because at the end of your life, the things you're going to regret are not going to be the things you did. They're going to be those things that you didn't do. And by then it's going to be too late to go back and do them.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's a big one. That's a big one. So I'm curious, in addition to being an awesome guest on all these podcasts, what are the things that you are doing right now to living that purposeful time?
I think I do a couple things. One, and this, I do this every day. I spend about an hour every day in prayer. I would be lying to you if I told you I didn't pray for myself. I absolutely do. I mean, I'm hoping for the miracle, that
Yes.
these tumors go away. But I've met so many people along this road that have asked me to pray for them. And so I do that. I try to do that every single day. The other thing that I do, and I have a tremendous group of nurses that care for me when I have my infusions during the week. And I just thought about their plight. Every single day you're dealing with cancer patients that you're giving chemo to, or clinical trial drugs, or blood, or whatever. And these people more than likely are eventually going to succumb to their disease. And that's what you deal with every single day. So I kind of make it my mission now, whenever I go to my infusions, to bring a bunch of stupid dad jokes, and just, make them laugh, make them say, you know what? Yeah, I see a lot of darkness and ugliness in the world, but you know what? This idiot comes every, 3 weeks, and he's got great jokes, and they laugh, and they have, I think they laugh. I don't know. They might be laughing at me because some of these jokes are kind of corny, but I found that humor, at least for me, helps me get through this. I remember when I had my foot amputated initially in 2018, and I remember I was hobbling is probably a better word, out of the hospital in this kind of boot contraption that they gave me that absolutely accentuated the fact that I did not have a foot.
Right.
There was a woman at the exit who was staring, I mean, just like really hard. And I'm looking around like, is she staring at me? Well, I'm the only person there. So apparently she was. And I remember I got right up to her. I turned, I looked her right in the eye, and I said, "Don't worry, it'll grow back." And then I just kept walking. And I looked over my shoulder, and she had this look on her face like,
what?
Will it? Will it really? Is this kind of like a salamander or something? You cut off its tail and, it grows back and stuff like that. But I like to use that humor just to try to diffuse, I mean, when you see somebody without a leg and, they're in a wheelchair and things like that, it can be uncomfortable, but I try to put people at ease with my humor.
Amazing. Amazing. Man, you are tremendously awesome. I love the energy.
Thank you.
So what are the favorite groups that you like to speak to? Do you obviously you're speaking your joyful humor into these nurses. You're on all these podcasts. Share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, that was, I made the brilliant business decision to start a motivational speaking business right as COVID hit. So please, anybody who's listening to us, do not take business advice from me. And like so many other businesses, when that happened, when the shutdown happened, I mean, nobody was doing either in-person or virtual events at the time. And so I had to figure out a way to retool, a way to deliver what I felt was important in a different way. And I didn't know how I was going to do that. And somebody reached out to me and said, "Hey, Terry, would you like to be a guest on my podcast?" I said, "Sure." What's a podcast? I had absolutely no idea. I had no idea what they were talking about. They explained it to me, and I thought, okay, yeah, sure, why not? I'll give it a shot. I'm a little nervous about it. And I was so nervous. I had like Post-it notes all around the camera. So people would ask me a question, and I would be like, well, they answered it. And I'd read the Post-it note. I didn't have good stories. I wasn't good at it. I was terrible at it. And about 6 months ago, I was doing a podcast with a former NFL player, National Football League player here in the United States. And this guy's like 6'6", 320 pounds. I mean, he put his forearm up on the desk, and like his forearm covered the camera. I mean, we couldn't see anything. This guy was huge. And we were talking afterwards, And he said, Terry, when I started my podcast, I was scared to death. I didn't
Mhm.
think anybody would want to listen to me. And I
Mhm.
think we all go through that. Do I have anything valuable to put out there in the world? Do I have anything valuable to say to other people? And I don't have all the answers, Amy. I don't purport to sit here and say, well, if you do what I tell you to do, you're going to have a great life. I don't know.
Yeah.
These things have worked for me. And what I try to do is just put them out there and say, if they work for you, then by all means take them. If
Yeah.
they don't, or maybe one or two of them work, then develop your own truths, develop your own passions around what your unique gifts and talents are. And that's basically all I try to do by being a guest on podcasts and by talking to different groups.
I love it. You know what? I love how you circled around. I think not on purpose at all, though, was that the principle that you shared with me today was about doing it anyway, right? Even if you have fear, like not letting fear stop you. And I love that you're sharing that we all have these thoughts around, do I have something valuable to add? Do I is what I think and know to be true something useful for others? And I think that's you living out that principle right there, right? Is just going
It,
for it and seeing that people are resonating with the words that you're sharing and that it is landing in people's hearts and
it
amazing.
is. And I remember recently reading an article that said, I think it was 84% of people who were surveyed believe they have a book inside them, whether it's a memoir or whether it's a fiction book. But less than 1% of those people will ever write that book.
Yeah.
And if you think about whether you have a made up story or you believe that you've done things in your life that could benefit other human beings, benefit other people, take that chance. I mean, I'm not telling you to write a book about walking your dog or taking the garbage out, but I mean, if you've got things in life, yeah, I know people do it all the time, and
People do
and
it.
yeah, and they're bestsellers, and good for them, and I'm very happy for them on that regard. But if you think there's something, kind of like if there's something in your heart, something in your soul that you feel you should do, go ahead and do it. Find the time to do that. Say, you talk about having to say no or saying yes too often. Say yes to the important things that are in your life. You look at the lives of successful, what we would say are successful people, and one of the biggest words those people use every day is no. No, I'm not
Yeah.
going to do that. No, I don't have time. That doesn't fit with my goals. That doesn't fit with my priorities. That doesn't fit with my values. I'm not going
Mhm.
to do that. I'm going to spend my time over here doing this. Figure out what your goals are. But I think before you do that, you have to understand what your values are.
Yes.
What's important to you, what is unshakable, that no matter what happens to you in your life, whether it's courage or whether it's commitment or honesty or truth or character or whatever it is, what are those things in your life that you're willing to die for, that you're willing to
Mhm.
commit your entire life to, with the understanding that you may never be successful. I think about that on my clinical trials. I mean, there were people that started this research and probably died thinking, my research didn't go anywhere, but somebody else picked it up and
Yes.
then developed it and worked on it. And now I'm benefiting from something that those people did that they thought that they were a failure at. So figure
Yeah.
out what your values are, then find out what your goals are, and then say yes to those goals and say no. I'm not saying no, don't say no to everything else, but pick and choose what you feel is important in your life that's going to get you to where you feel you're supposed to be. And part of that, if you look at people's life, part of that is having to say no to people who you would kind of like to say yes to, but you know what? Sorry, it just doesn't work for me right now.
Yeah, I love that. And really the quote I bring up a lot because it is so deep for me is sometimes we have to say no to the good things in order to say yes to the great,
Yeah.
right? Saying yes to the things that are aligned with our values, saying yes to the things that are aligned for us. And yes, it can feel uncomfortable and challenging to say no, to say not right now. But imagine a world where we are living more in alignment with those values and everyone doing that. Man, that would be incredible.
Yeah, but we don't think about values. We hear about goals, we hear about New Year's resolutions and all those kind of things, but they're not tied to anything. They're just kind of flapping in the breeze out there. And it's like, if you tie your goals to your values, it's an anchor, it's a foundation that you've got, that now you can go out and take a chance and take a risk and see what happens, with the understanding that if you fail, you're not a failure. I love the Nelson Mandela quote of, I never lose. I either learn or I win.
Yeah.
And I love that. It's like, you're successful, or did you learn something? Yeah, I learned something. Okay. Then your business may have failed, but could you take what you learned and apply it to starting another business? Who knows?
Amazing. So as we wrap up here today, I know that you've been on so many podcasts and you've got tremendous amount of wisdom, even though you may question that. You have a tremendous amount of wisdom.
Thank you.
What would you leave our listeners with from time with Terry Tucker?
Yeah, I'll leave you with this story. I had a nurse recently ask me, what was it like to have your foot amputated and to have your leg amputated? And I told her it certainly has not been easy. When you're 6'8", learning to walk again, falling is not an option. You get hurt from falling from 6'8". But what I told her was, cancer can take all my physical faculties, but cancer can't touch my mind, it can't touch my heart, and it can't touch my soul. And that's who I am. That's who you are, Amy. That's who everybody who's listening to us really is. And we spend a lot of time, at the gym, and I'm not telling you not to. You should, you should absolutely work on this body that you have, but understand that this body is just a vessel. It's just a house to hold who you really are, which is your heart, your mind, and your soul. So yes, spend time developing your body, getting the right amount of rest, getting, stress out of your life, exercising, eating right. Yes, do that. But also spend a little time each day developing your heart, developing your mind, and developing your soul. Because if you do that, I'm going to promise you, now I'm no prophet or angel or anything like that, but I really think at the end of your life, if you spend more time working on that stuff, you're going to have a whole lot more peace in your heart.
Oh, I love that. Thank you, Terry. Thank you for being here today. It's been a pleasure hearing your stories and feeling your joy that you clearly are meant to be spreading with all of us. So I appreciate you.
Well, Amy, thanks for having me on.
It was amazing. So thank you so much to all the listeners as well. And stay tuned for the next episode of Power to the People Pleasers.